But what changes here is very, very important, in terms of physics, is what we call the density of state. The density of state as function of energy. And you can see, I don't want to go into the detail, but what is you can see, for example, this density of state. The density of state means how many states we have for electrons to occupy. Because the electrons occupy energy states, and the more density of state we have, the better for the devices. Okay? So you can see here in this three-dimensional system, 3D system, we've got very, very small number of density of state in here. If I make it 2D, it starts increasing. 1D becomes increasing, and if I make it 0D, it becomes a delta function, which means I have, for certain energies, I have a large number of electrons which can occupy a large number of states. And that's very, very important. So by changing the dimension of the system, I can change the number of electrons or holes which can occupy certain energy state. And this is very fundamental in physics, and the whole, it's very, very difficult to probably understand. But an electron in quantum mechanics, it can't occupy every energy state. It can only occupy some allowed energy state in the system. Okay. Classically, I can be here, I can be here, I can be here, I can be anywhere I want. But in quantum mechanics, either I can be here, can be here. So there are allowed energy states which I can occupy. So you can occupy every energy state. And this is very fundamental, absolutely fundamental for the reason why we want to study low dimensional structures or nano structures. That's the reason why, because of this density of state as function of energy. This is the most important thing. Okay. So let me just here, I'm going to show you some examples by using semiconductors. Okay. These are, in any material system can be classified in 3 different categories. You can have them as wood and insulators, which don't conduct electricity. You can have another type of material like metals. So I can have wood that doesn't conduct electricity. I can have metal which conduct electricity. But of course I can have what I call semiconductors which only conduct electricity under certain conditions. Okay? And these kind of semiconductors, including silicon, which is called group 4, or we can have group 3 semiconductors. You can, for example, have aluminium and arsenic, gallium and arsenic. You can have a combination of this material system. And this becomes very, very important kind of materials for both electronics and optoelectronics industry. So these are the materials you should think of. Silicon, germanium, aluminium, gallium, indium, and all these materials here are very important. And that's what we call the 2 sixes, the group form 2 and the group form 6 in the Mendeleev table, are all very important kind of semiconductors technology. And they have all different properties. But today I'm only going to probably concentrate on the 3-5 semiconductors today. Okay, so if I take, for example, from these things, I can take aluminium, gallium, and arsenic, just these 3 materials. I combine the 3 and the 5. So if I have, let's say, for example, a substrate, like something to hold my thin film, so all the things I'm going to discuss are going to be very, very atomic. They have the thicknesses at the atomic level. So I can have aluminium and arsenic material, okay? I can put on top of it gallium and arsenic, and I can put another aluminium and arsenic on top of it. So I just practically make a sandwich structure of making aluminium arsenide, gallium arsenide, aluminium arsenide. So this is going to be treated. So by just stacking materials one on top of the other, what you're actually doing, you're changing the energy of the system. So really, if you do some calculation, you can find out the energy of aluminium arsenide, the energy of gallium arsenide. So for example, the energy of aluminium arsenide here, I didn't show you in the previous thing. Here I call the conduction bond developed by the semiconductors. So I'm not sure how familiar with those notions. But here, practically, you can see that the energy of this material is bigger than the energy of this material. Okay? That's energy, just want to be energy scale. So if you do this structure here, you have high energy material, low energy material, high energy material. Here what you have done in terms of quantum mechanics, you have produced what I call a quantum well. يعني حاسب. A quantum well. So you go this side, you go down, you go up, you go up. So you got a quantum well. Okay? So this, as you can see, it becomes the energy of the system is completely different. Okay? And then we show some examples. Okay. So, but just you can see, by just stacking materials on top of the other, you can engineer what the energy of the system looks like. And what is going to be important. Okay. So, when you combine different parts of the system, for example, aluminum arsenide, gallium arsenide, this is what we call them heterostructures, because they're made of different material systems. If you are the same material system, we call them homostructures. If you have different structures, we call them heterostructures, because they're two different materials. Okay, and these are very, very important kind of structures which practically allow to make any device you wish to design. So here I'm just showing you how we can use this heterostructure to make light emitting diode for probably this light emitting diode. How to make lasers like this one I'm using today, because I have many colors you want. And of course transistors as well. You can make some transistors, but you can make photovoltaic devices. I'll show some examples later. So all by using this heterostructure, using different materials with different energy, you can design anything you wish to have. What we call a bond gap engineering. And all these have to use quantum mechanics. So how we can create these heterostructures? Because you remember what I showed you here earlier, as you can see, I've got just one atomic layer here of aluminium, atomic layer of arsenic. So these are only of the order of few angstrom, a tenth of a nanometer. And of course, nanometer is 10 to the minus 9 of a meter. So you can see the scale. We are practically talking about the minus 10 meters. 10 minus 10 meters. Okay. So how we can make these heterostructures? There are different techniques to make these heterostructures. That's what I call this as well, bottom up. So I'm usually start with something which I have to put this thin film to support these thin films. And I'm starting from the bottom going up. And as I said, I'm just making this kind of sandwich. Can you imagine this is bread, this is cheese, bread, cheese, bread, cheese, bread, cheese. Here you make it with the real material, semiconductor material to make that structure. But today I'm only going to talk about this molecular beam epitaxy technique and show you how this is important, but there are many, many other important. So this molecular beam technique, it's about 30, 35 years old. And it's been absolutely the starting revolution of the quantum devices. It's made possible, all the devices I'm talking about today have been made possible by this kind of techniques, what I call epitaxy technique. So the first 10 years, people just to understand, because remember I showed this simple diagram here, I'm just practically piling atoms at a substrate, so just something you want to deposit on. But what's going to happen to this atom on the other the surface? So you have to understand that. And that's what I call here in this example, understanding MB. Because you're finding atoms and they arrive at the surface, what's going to happen to them? How they're going to rearrange themselves and so on. So people spend a lot of time to understand how this atom rearranges themselves. And then when we understood this process, we went actually again and make this, in the next 10 years, we made this structures I've been discussing earlier on, how to make this quantum web, for example. And also, of course, discussing, making more devices, optoelectronics, photovoltaics, and as well, I'll show some new ideas about new material systems. So this took a bit of time. So here are the kind of things which we usually start when we grow these structures. We start with substrate. And this, for example, this could be any substrate, but it could be gallium arsenide. I'm just showing you, for example, aluminium antimony. But it could be gallium arsenide. These are quite a very big pool, okay? Very, very large. You grow them in different material. And what you do, you cut them into pieces. And usually each piece is about 450 microns, because you need the template to put this thin film. So usually the template is the same material system as the one you are depositing on. It's very, very important. Okay, so you start with this. And what you do, once you have cut this, usually you buy this already commercially available. So people grow them in a very big pool, cut them into pieces, and then that's what you use for gallium arsenide wafer. So this is my starting substrate which I want to use. And what I have here in this molecular epitaxy is a very, very simple technique. If I want to evaporate aluminium, I put aluminium solid, gallium solid, arsenic solid. So these are my elements which I put in kind of what I call the furnaces, if you wish to, because I'm going to evaporate them. And all these atoms are going to be found at this substrate. Gallium, arsenic is going to be found in the system. And I'm going to try to make these sandwich structures made of aluminium arsenide, gallium arsenide, any mixture I want, any composition I want. And of course, in any device you have, you need electrons and you need holes, because these two particles, you need them in order to make a device. And what we call them a dopant. We have to, in order to create these electrons, we put silicon atoms. Silicon gives you 1 electron in this system. And if you use beryllium here atom, it gives you 1 hole. It means a lack of electrons. Because this goes into the gallium arsenide and it gives you 1 electron, 3 electrons to move, or it gives you 3 holes to move. Because a hole is just a positive charge, like an electrons moving in the other directions, practically. But you need these 2 in order to create a device. And all you do, you fire these elements, and all you do to make this sound structure, you go to a kind of a mechanical shatter, and you can make gallium aluminum arsenide, aluminum arsenide, just how you close this shatter in front of these elements. And you can make anything you wish. But of course, the schematic, this just shows schematic diagram of LB, which is a bit more complicated than the principle I've showed you, just heating some elements and let them fire. But all this deposition is done usually in ultra-high vacuum conditions. Here we are talking, if you take, for example, the atmospheric pressure, it's about 1,000 tons. Okay, that's the atmospheric pressure. So when we evaporate this material system, we do it at 10 minus 11 fold. So we see it's 10 minus 14 below the pressure of atmosphere. What does it mean? It means that this chamber it has got practically no foreign atoms or impurities we're going to incorporate in the device, because we have pumped all these atoms, foreign atoms, away from the system. And you got a very good vacuum inside. So all is going to be deposited in your substrate, in this gallium arsenide, it's just the atoms you want to deposit. You won't have any incorporation from other atoms from the system. Because remember, when you open the system, you got air, okay, and you got all kind of things going in there, and you don't want them to be incorporated. So all these MBEs, particularly a deposition technique, but under ultra-high vacuum conditions. So this is the kind of condition you find in outer space, where there's no molecules, no foreign atoms. Okay. So that's what the principle is. So actually, this is the first MBE system. So this just shows you substrate and show you the furnaces here, where you can load practically all your elements. And it's actually in Bell Labs, actually in the late 60s. And you can see this was very, very tiny, very efficient chamber, which people try to experiment. Okay. Since that time, in the early 80s, it takes about 12 years, so people started making this commercially. So you can see from the first prototype to the commercial MBE system. So this is actually one of the MBE systems which we bought in Nottingham in 1985. Actually, it's from US, but there was some from UK, from France, and I think one from Japan. So there was only very few manufacturers who can make this machine. Okay? So you can see from the first few ideas in the late 60s, early 70s, to becoming commercially available in the early 80s. So it took a bit about 10 to 12 years to do. Okay? But I will show you as well the commercial one. So these are research machines. Okay? A research machine means you can only practically grow on one substrate at a time. Okay? So if you look at this is the substrate, you can have only one there. But I can show you the production what they can do later on. So those people who are lucky enough to have won this machine in the early 80s, they've done quite well, because all the quantum mechanics practically started by having one of these machines. Not actually proving the concept of quantum mechanics. Because you can do a lot of theory in your lectures, but there was no proof about the quantum effect. How can you prove this is a quantum effect? Hopefully today I'm going to show you one of the examples about the quantum effect in some of these devices. All because you can make these devices smaller and smaller in a very comparable way. Okay. So here I've just showed you I'm going to select some few examples. I'm going to go through some few of them. Let me just go to the next.